Hello and welcome to episode 39 of Entertainment of Excellence, the podcast where we talk about films, TV, all of it. Hi, I'm Ollie.
I'm Thom.
And I'm Ben.
And today we're talking about the 1998 film, The Truman Show. This may contain spoilers.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So, the Truman Show, which is about, if you have never heard of it before, is about Truman, and basically his entire life has been broadcast 24/7 as a TV show. So it's in a massive dome studio that's like the size of a like a city or something. And basically every aspect of his life is controlled, like all the people he interacts with, and it's been going for 30 years. But he then starts to realise that something is wrong because the actor that played his dad comes back to try and tell him after he was killed, and there's you notice there's a lot of strange occurrences, like problems with the radio that means he can hear the extras' directions and stuff like that. And then he eventually does manage to escape and confront the creator of basically his reality in an epic final scene.
And in case I don't see you, or I see you.
Nice one, bringing it back on brand. I'm proud of you, Ben. That is, I'm gonna say,
see you.
that is the top quote you've ever said in your entire life.
Oh,
like there's nowhere to go but down now.
That's good.
Well,
I feel like that's where I belong.
Yeah.
It was groovy.
So what do you think of the premise? Because it is actually like really original for the time. I mean, you could draw parallels with The Matrix, but this was a year before The Matrix. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And just the idea of someone's whole life being broadcast on television was quite strange, because I think Big Brother is credited with being like the first proper reality show, and that started in 2000, so 2 years after this. So this was a thing that had never really been heard of before, or this kind of idea. It would have been very strange.
And it was obviously
and
the idea was obviously really fleshed out, because it had a whole montage at the start of people saying like why they watch Truman. It's like, it's comforting because it's just is like raw reactions. He's relatable, and like whilst everything else is controlled, it's like there's nothing fake. It's all like true. It's true, man.
It's true, man.
Just make the same joke.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for a contemporary audience, it would definitely be like very groundbreaking, and it almost set up a lot of what came later, not necessarily in terms of films, but as you were saying about reality TV shows and stuff like that. But I definitely think we'll probably come to it later, but there's the question of morality about whether his life is better because everything's controlled and he's like in this bubble that although it's artificial, it's safe, and that's why it's comforting to a lot of people. But then also, obviously, there's the debate that he has no free will and he's been controlled by this corporation.
Yeah, it's like a great idea, because also just the way he has to grapple with coming to realize it is quite difficult. I mean, because obviously there are like people with genuine mental conditions where they think that their reality is simulated or everyone isn't real around them. So it's kind of a weird thing to have that to actually happen, or in the context of the film, and you can feel insane. And there's, if you're looking at people, they seem to be acting odd, and like seeing that the lift thing where it goes back and it's some kind of like breakout room for the extras with snacks and stuff. Like all the little things that it does without it being like really blunt and on the nose helps to flesh out the world. Like that, and the radio broadcasting directions to the extras was cool. At the start, when it's the fallen lamp which says Sirius on, so they've obviously got lights for like every actual or every visible star in the sky, but it's never like extremely on the nose about everything. It doesn't explicitly explain stuff.
Yeah.
Like you can see one of my favorite subtle things is every time you run into the doppelgangers, they'd push him against the billboard where he'd see them so that the camera could display the advert on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole world's really fleshed out, because it also, obviously, if you're running an island that's like in a whole dome, and you've got these incredibly expensive like hidden camera setups, you'd want to finance it somehow, and that's kind of shown through product placement. So it's like everything in the world is for sale. You can buy like the extras outfits and stuff, and obviously there are these like weird commercial sort of rants that his wife will go on that are like subtle enough that he won't notice in his own world, but like she like breaks the fourth wall, and if you're watching, it's just like, wow, this is this particular lawnmower brand, damn, we should go buy it.
Yeah.
Just little things like that.
Is that they didn't something that they could have done which would have allowed for a massive twist would be like you sort of experience it as Truman, and you're meant to sort of pick up on the clues that this isn't reality. But I guess that would sort of make it more difficult to advertise and do trailers for. But I think it's they don't, like, right from the start, it opens with the interviews with the cast members, but then you also have these things breaking down right from the very start with the light falling down. So, there's the sense that this is like a somewhat idealized world for him, but then throughout it, you always have these hints that something's not quite right.
Yeah, I like the fact that the world seemed to be breaking down, like, even from the start, and like, obviously when you have flashbacks and stuff with like Truman as a kid, like going over a wall or something that would just like reveal cameras behind it or something. Like the fact that it requires like so much effort to keep this sort of illusion alive. I really liked that. But of course, for like Truman, it's, as you said earlier, Tom, that like there are mental illnesses that where you will feel like you're constantly being watched, or there's a conspiracy around you, like some schizophrenic episodes and stuff. So you'll kind of dismiss a lot of stuff like this as just like flights of weird thoughts. So he's probably been essentially in denial his whole life, and it's only like once his dad returns is the catalyst for the events of the rest of the film and ultimately breaking free, because that's just such a big event that's had a huge impact on his life.
Yeah, and this kind of simulated environment also helps to bring in some interesting ideas about like the human condition, well, or at least how a human is made, because you see he's been living in this idealized world that it kind of crafts him into just a really like standard plain guy, like the whole good morning if I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Like, and he works at a desk job, and he has to have a wife, and it's kind of the way that it's tailored. It shows you how like human beings can be like a product of their environment, and it kind of shows that idea, and then also at the same time talks about the morality of doing so, because they don't want him to have his original love for exploring, because they don't want him to leave. So what they do is they create the most traumatic event in his entire life, where he's gone out on a boat with his dad and they engineer his dad's death and make it look like it's his fault so that he'll never go over the water again. And there's a lot of moments in this film where it feels quite horrific. Like, I mean, the rating in Britain is only like PG, but they managed to get elements of almost horror in, but in quite a psychological way, and like just existentially terrifying ideas like that one. So a lot of time it can leave you feeling like quite frustrated.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that it sort of derives from horror, and it would definitely be horror. And I think something that kind of like not so much lightened the mood, but sort of like gave you a bit of breathing space, so that like all this horrific stuff doesn't overwhelm you, is sort of like about halfway through the story shifts from like being focused entirely on Truman to like showing the creator Christoph and the directors behind the scenes and everything in the Moon studio, because they're in the moon. I found that was quite an interesting way of doing it, because my thought would have been, well, you just follow Truman the whole time as he starts to break free. But no, I kind of like this shift in perspective, and now when things start to go wrong, you're getting both sides, because you're getting Truman becoming more and more confident that he's right, and you've also got the directors behind the scenes going completely wild because he's going off script.
Yeah, it's like everything's presented as being really meticulously crafted and designed. And I know how in an interview Christoph says that they'd say something like the revenue of the show is the equivalent of the GDP of some countries, and he's like, we need a whole country's population to run it. So you genuinely offering those two perspectives, it definitely sort of breaks the facade of everything being perfect. And as Thom was saying, that's sort of how Truman himself is presented, but it's not necessarily what the reality is. And then, as you also see, the perspective of the people watching it and like these massive fans, but they're not, as I think is perfectly encapsulated in the final shot where you have these two people saying, "Oh, what else is on it?" It doesn't really mean anything to them. I think that definitely is very relevant, especially with reality TV shows, how you getting a glimpse on this person's life, and but you fail to ever fully empathize with them, and you sort of just move on as your day goes on.
Yeah, because those different perspectives of people watching made what for me was like the most gut-wrenching moment, which is when they bring his father back and say that he was just missing and like had amnesia. So for everyone watching, it's this kind of like heartwarming moment where he's reunited with his dad. But when you see it from Truman's perspective, or maybe not even Truman's perspective, like just knowing that everything's fake, it's like they've engineered this moment, and it's to stop him from like living an actual true life. And I don't know, that moment for me was like, oh. Even though this is the second time I've watched it, it was still...
Yeah, and you've got the directors narrating what's going on whilst Truman like walks up to his dad and hugs him.
Yeah,
It's
and they're like,
this
and music swell.
and music swell. We need the crane shot
Yeah.
and cut.
Yeah, that it was. Oh, that scene is one where. So I think overall the film is like quite. It's pretty fast paced. Like the screenplay is really like it's a tight screenplay. There's no scenes that are unnecessary, and it can. I was definitely never bored. It was an absolute blast to watch it. But that scene, like it knew to slow down and follow all the like. It then makes you you realize that the film you're watching is meticulously like put together, all these shots and when to cut and the movement of the camera, and it's slowing it down and seeing in the way that they're effectively doing the same thing with his emotions and like his life plans. That was a really effective scene for me.
Yeah, because there's like the mix of it being really emotional in that you sort of feel relieved for Truman, but at the same time he is being manipulated, and it's again this thing that's set up by an external force, and he obviously is invested in this reality, whereas it's not true. But I think, as you were saying about the pacing, I've also watched this before, but I think another factor that definitely contributes quite a lot to it being so easy to watch is the humor and just the comedic aspects, because I definitely think Jim Carrey was cast really well in this. I think he played the role of Truman really well, but I also just like other things, like how every time anything starts to go wrong, his friend just rushes around with like a 6-pack of beer to sort everything out, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now that's a beer.
Yeah.
And there's so many great, and they're like independent rain cloud that starts following him around.
Yeah.
And every time, I mean, actually, some parts you can see is funny, but also is kind of like part of it being like, oh no, aspect where, like, if he ever chases after anyone, like, you'll get a bike riding in front of him, someone in a wheelchair will go past, the bus's doors will close, or in the hospital there's a guy with a tray thing that covers up the entire corridor will come past.
Yeah.
There's loads of ridiculous stuff like that.
It's not like a ha 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 funny. It's sort of like gentle humor to sort of keep you invested and sort of make you warm to Truman as a character.
Yeah, and it's often like incorporated really well. Like obviously there's the scene with the iconic, like, where he draws the astronaut helmet on the mirror. That's an iconic scene, which in itself it's kind of dumb. And they're like, oh, he's back to his normal self, and then you get that one was for free. There's like loads of he used like catching on, and it's, I don't know, they work in the comedy like really well without it ever feeling forced or odd. I don't know, it was always good.
Yeah, because I think the comedy definitely works well with like the existential themes, because even when you have like when he's confronting his wife and she's sort of doesn't really know what to do, so she reverts back to breaking the fourth wall with the advertisement, and on the face of it that's quite a comedic moment just because it's so jarring and out of place, but then when you start to think about it, it sort of builds on this idea that everything is fake for him, and he's sort of being exploited for this corporation to make money.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to like quickly rattle through some top moments. Like, one of them is the scene where he does discover the thing behind the elevator, and there's that like really wide shot of him, going into different buildings where he's not supposed to be, and just kind of like go through the revolving door loads. That all the shots worked really well, and his kind of like confusion, but also determination was like portrayed really well by Jim Carrey. And also at that point, I think that was probably the highlight for the soundtrack for me, because the soundtrack then was playing kind of like a strange, I think it had like the most iconic melody as well. That bit, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but if I ever heard it, I'd be like, oh yeah. But I remember the rhythm being like, it's quite odd. It uses an odd time signature and it repeats in a slightly different way where it adds like another beat, and it just emphasizes this sense of feeling something wrong and something out of place. So I thought it was really effective there.
Yeah, I mean, the guy that has to play the live music, that's a bit of a difficult job. It's just...
What was the guy on the bike doing at the... Is that like supposed to be running the tape or something? I couldn't quite figure out what he was doing.
Having a break, I don't know.
Yeah, I think they just had it in there.
One of my favourite like slow moments was just when you saw Truman on the like it's the shot that's on the poster. It's Truman like just asleep on the TV, and there's like people relaxing to him, and that's like a really good embodiment of this film, because you know when you're sleeping, that's when you want your most sense of privacy, and it's just like everyone around the world is just watching him sleep. And you know, people use it to relax, and it's kind of just like that's just was really effective for me. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Bravo.
I mean, standout scene for me was probably the interview with Christoph, and then the previous cast member. I can't remember her name, but the person that there was like the love interest.
Sylvia.
Yeah.
Sylvia's a real name.
Yeah, because you know that the only criticism I'd have slightly is it felt like it wasn't really, it was like hell not showing, because it was sort of, you know, you could work out the morality argument without having to see that film, that interview, like which explicitly outlined a lot of these debates. But I think it was, you know, it didn't. The interesting thing about that, and what I felt sort of subverted a lot of what you'd kind of expect from a film like this, is it didn't really say either side was right. Like you never really saw any sense of regret from Christoph, and he was genuinely, like, even once Truman had found out that he was in this show, he was still saying he can still stay because this is a safe place where, you know, you're away from all the corruption of the real world. So I think there was like a sense of ambiguity created through that interview, and then also obviously in the ending when he breaks out.
That interview had my favourite quote as well, because it's the only I actually wrote it down. Because Ed Harris says, like, we accept the reality of the world with which we are presented, and that part to me kind of almost made it feel like the film was like an inspirational moment where it's or just supposed to be like the pit of despair for some people, where it's kind of saying, like, you know, all these people that are working dead-end jobs, or they're not really happy with their financial situation or something, you know, people will just accept the status quo and maybe not think about even like radical change or following maybe a more artistic career, even if it's not as financially fulfilling. It brought up a lot of ideas about that to me, like not just saying, you know, what if the Matrix. I felt like it was saying more than that. About just accepting your situation, and you know, it's a thing of maybe people in more like oppressed environments. You know, you just have to accept that you live there, but you know, maybe I felt like the film was saying maybe you shouldn't. That quote was pretty epic.
In a weird way, it sort of explored kind of similar themes to the Marvel show that came out this week, WandaVision, about like an idealized reality that, you know, begins to break down.
That's true, but I mean, probably shouldn't talk about WandaVision too much, but it seems to be implied that Wanda is bringing that upon herself. So I don't know what's happening with that.
Yeah, don't spoil
kind
that.
of wacky.
No.
Well, we can't really because we don't actually know what's happening. Anyway, back to the Truman Show.
Yeah.
I,
Just gonna point out that Truman's a massive simp. After like years later, still piecing together the girl's face with pictures from porn magazines.
That's true. As well as Jim Carrey's performance, I just want to point out like the other ones. So Laura Linney as Meryl was good, but before talking about her, I just want to talk about Marlon, who's played by Noah Emmerich. I think probably the scene with the best acting in for me was when Truman had gone to the harbour because he wanted to try and escape, and then Marlon was there with him saying like, if everyone's in on it, then I have to be, and I know I'm not in on it, and he has to say the last thing I would ever do to you is lie to you, or the last thing I would ever do is lie to you.
Whilst
and he's being fed this
lines.
line, and it's just like the face. Well, it's Marlon, but the actor's not actually called Marlon. Oh wait, he might be. I can't remember. But like the face that he has before he says that, it's so like, he's starting to question: is this okay? This is, he knows that he's betraying the person that he's supposed to be best friends with.
Yeah, I love that subtle dichotomy between like the intentions and beliefs of Christoph mainly Christoph, but also like, you assume the directors and the people outside of the actual world, and then the actors who are sort of they've just accepted this because for a lot of them they've probably spent their whole life in this world, so it has become their world as well. But they can't really resist this dialogue that they're being fed and forced to say, but you can definitely, especially in that scene, see that sense of doubt. And also when as I mentioned before, he's like confronting his wife and she says, can someone help me out? And
she says, do something.
Yeah, so I love that like the doubt and the resistance of the actors themselves.
Yeah, Laura Linney did really well in that scene, and the one where he's trying to drive out of, is it called Sea Haven, the city? I think it's Sea Haven. That bit Laura Linney did really well, but I've also she's also in Ozark, in that she has to act quite desperate at times, but I mean that was good. And did you ever catch on like what happened at the surgery scene? Because all of the actors in the operating theatre were kind of like, what do we do? What do we do? Is watching, and then like they move for an incision or something, and then they kick something over and have to. Actually, the guard then pulls down the curtain, but then one of them says like, "We'll get someone in to clean this up." It's like, did he actually like start cutting the person's leg off? What?
They were just trying to make it look like that, so it sound like that.
Okay, yeah.
But did they know he was there? Because like, is that what they always do, even when no one's around? Just pretend to do the operation?
Oh, yeah. I assume they have to, start pretending in case he does suddenly go around.
I assume it's just like as long as he's in like the vicinity, you need to be working. In case he just suddenly makes a run for it.
Yeah. They definitely knew that at that point because they were getting like extras in to stop him going there and stuff. But yeah, I mean it's cool. I liked one of the other sort of things was that they'd, as soon as anything happened that made him start to doubt the world, they'd have to get someone to stand near the newspaper stand with the headline showing like, oh, this is the explanation for that weird thing. And like the elevator thing, and then his wife says like, did you hear about the elevator shaft in the other building? Imagine if you'd have been in there, you could have died. So that's why they were doing this construction, and it's like, yeah, okay, we see.
Yeah, it's a lot of the little things like that as the audience, you just like, yeah, alright, sure, you do you. But I guess it just really makes you think that if you were trapped in there rather than Truman, and you'd been raised your whole life to believe this, then stuff like that wouldn't necessarily be as jarring. You probably just wouldn't notice it. Um, and I don't know. I kind of felt this odd like feeling of while I was watching the film, what would happen if I'd grown up in there? What would have happened if this was me? Uh, and like that realization that you'd probably be no different to Truman. You'd like waltz around your daily life, uh, and just sort of comply because you wouldn't notice things are wrong. And then when you do, you'll just like dismiss them. That's sort of like, I guess, kind of like scary, but also like fascinating, I guess.
Yeah, especially when the people that he thinks he can trust the most have been told to tell him things that almost imply that he's insane in some way, and like he's the only one that's questioning this, whereas, as I was saying, they're doubting whether that is justified or not. But something else that I thought was quite interesting is like a sort of question. One of the frequently asked questions is, why isn't Truman angry at the end? And I think that's quite an interesting debate because, like, I guess it links back to that. Is it immoral or not? Because, he's been in this state where he hasn't really been exposed to anything, and that's why people ultimately watch it, because it's that sense of escapism and comforting. But it doesn't. I guess there's like a sense of excitement perhaps at the end, because he's not necessarily angry, but he's just optimistic, like he's been presented the whole film about what's next in his life.
I see it as him not being angry because he's initially is obviously angry about it, like his whole world being fake, but then at that point, there's the ominous door to the outside world, and he knows that he's able to leave, and that I think for once in his life he realizes he's in control. Because he is still like snarky. To Christoph and stuff, and I think it's just there's so many different feelings going on that he just can't. I don't know. I think it made sense. That end scene was like probably would have been perfect for me, apart from that it kept cutting in like shots of people watching the show and also Sylvia, and to be honest, that kind of annoyed me. I would have preferred the last scene if it was just between him and Christoph.
Yeah, I like this.
That's one of my few gripes.
I like the cuts of people watching throughout the rest of the film, but at the end it just felt a bit jarring, like it broke up the sort of natural progression of the story. Like, and especially in that final scene. But I kind of liked the whole Sylvia subplot, with the fact that obviously she felt guilty about lying to Truman and tried her best to tell the truth, but like...
I liked that subplot. I just didn't like the way it was handled at the end.
Yeah,
I thought that was a good subplot. Like, and the only other gripe I had, so there's the like shots of different people at the end, and the only other thing was it wasn't always very clear if the shot that you could see was like part of the show or not, because obviously some of them definitely were. You could see like these hidden cameras, but then some shots were definitely like there's no way it would be possible to get these kind of moving shots without just having a cameraman right in front of him.
Yeah,
so I think it could have been a bit more clear, but they're like the only criticisms that I've got.
I think most of the shots in the movie were like just to tell the story rather than to show what's actually going on the screen, because I noticed there was like two different camera styles. Obviously, because most of them are in like buttons and in objects and hidden. So you've got these sort of small lens, narrow shots, as opposed to some of the wider ones you'd have with the film cameras to tell the story. Which is why my only criticism is kind of nitpicking a bit, is like the sort of jarringness between that, and you do see some shots from what was obviously in the show, so you do see a couple of shots from Buttons and stuff, but then when it gets to his dad returning, and it's like cut to the crane shots, and you physically see on the screen these like film camera shots with like cranes, and it's cut to this and that, and it looks like really beautifully done. I'm just kind of take it out of the story for a second. I'm like, wait, where's the crane? Where did they hide a crane?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with just coming back to the thing about the Sylvia at the end. But I'd actually kind of like to see more of the Sylvia subplot, because
Yeah,
I feel like when he first opened up that box, and like it's got these really evocative items that bring back these memories, and they sort of deal with it through flashbacks, which are cheesy. And I guess that's kind of meant to embrace the fact that reality shows like this are inherently cheesy a bit, but not the film itself, but like the premise of the show that it takes place in. But I'd kind of like to see more of that. I don't really know if that would be her in the world with Truman, or like, as you say, when she's outside of it.
I'd have liked to see her somehow try and contact Truman from the outside. I don't know how that would have worked.
Yeah,
I can't really think of it, but I felt that as an idea that would have been quite cool. Maybe like she tried to send something inside. I don't know. Just something that like he knows she's still alive, and then he sort of has that motivation to like well, like not the motivation to find out what's really happening isn't enough, but like sort of a bit more to sort of drive him on. Although I guess maybe that might sour the ending a little bit, because you know that he ends up going outside to like get the girl, you know. Whereas here, you know, he doesn't know she's out there, and it's just really down to whether he would prefer the outside world or the world he's been living in his own life. I don't know.
yeah. Because I mean, you definitely see moments of like people trying to break in, because there's the moment where like he's opening presents, and then that guy jumps out of the box, and then there's someone parachuting down. And also the fact that he has this the thing that says "How's it going to end?" that is constantly with him. That's like a reminder of Sylvia. And I guess I know it might be a bit of a stretch, but I've seen that obviously Truman is, you know, meant to represent true man. It almost reminds me of in Death of a Salesman, like they're called the Low Man family, so it's meant to like represent regular people. But then I've seen that Christoph is meant to almost sound like Christ, so I guess there could sort of be a religious aspect to it. And at the end, where he's like ascending to meet Christoph, I guess you could read into it that way.
I mean, I assume that how's it going to end, like, Button is some kind of, like, protest group button or pin. I don't know, because...
I completely forgot what the word was. I was like, button. I just forgot what it was called.
Yeah, because, you know, that is obviously a question. How would it end? It's got to end with him dying. And, but it did interesting things, like, without saying it, like, obviously Christoph said, oh, the reason he wants him to have a baby is for like the first on-air conception, but you know, that's also a way to extend the life of the show. Then, you know, you follow his kids, and you can just have it going on and on and on. That's quite a scary thought. So Yeah, that was cool. But to go back to the subplot about Sylvia, I think that it was perfect how it was. Sorry, fellas. I liked it being like, I think it was big enough without being like too invasive. So you're objectively wrong, basically.
Excuse me, this is 2-1, so you're objectively
Oh
wrong.
no!
And most of all, you're a special guest.
Oh
Yeah,
no!
so
I
your
thought I
opinion
wasn't a
doesn't even
special guest
count.
anymore.
Watch out, or you'll have your speaking privileges removed.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Back in the basement with the cockroaches.
No.
And with that, I think it's time to wrap up the reviews. Just want to say something quickly. The name you were on about the name Truman. True Man. It sounds quite cool. It's like his name. I'd like to draw parallels with the Roman from Robot Monster.
Guys,
so
I want to
Robot
draw
Man.
parallels to Harry S. Truman. I don't know if you've heard of him. He was that
How
one
about-
guy.
How about
yeah.
Harry Truman, the guy that didn't want to move house?
Oh man, we need to.
What?
So,
Oh, no.
slight tangent in like geography. Be watching this documentary about like Mount St. Helens and its eruption a while back, and there was just this one like American like old man who was just like had lived there on his whole life. He was just like, I don't want to move. I'm staying here. I was born here. I'll die here. That kind of stuff. But like you couldn't understand a word he was saying. It kind of just sounded like.
And apparently there was meant to be a Harry Truman song, but we never got to hear that, unfortunately.
And the
Oh.
implication
I
is he
guess
died in the eruption. So, F
Well,
for
I
the
guess
chat
you
for
could
Harry
say Harry
Truman.
Truman's the opposite of Truman.
Damn,
He
This is
didn't
deep.
Stay where, yeah.
he just stays where he is. He's completely happy with living his own existence without voyaging into the rest of the world. He took he took the blue pill.
Okay, should we rate the Truman Show?
I think that comparison to Harry Truman has actually bumped up my rating a bit. I hadn't thought about it. Pretty deep stuff.
Yeah, it really gives another interpretation to the whole thing, really.
There's
Anyway,
probably about 4 people that know what we're talking about.
four
I don't know
people.
what
We've got like
Harry
one
Truman.
listener.
Well, in the world.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
in the entire
Harry
world.
Truman's
And one of
family.
them's Mrs. Collis. Right, okay, go to entertainmentofexcellence.weebly.com, go to the Hall of Fame section, and there's a link to every rating in order, which we always use to fine-tune our ratings. So, I haven't looked at the IMDb score, but I seem to remember it being like quite low. Like, was it in the early...
It's not like...
No.
Was it?
250.
What is it?
I mean, it's lower than the Meta
It's
score.
8.1.
Oh, right. I thought it was like 7.4. Okay. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I was gonna go probably like in the 8s. In the top 5 at least. I liked it better than Stalker, but did I like it better than I'm Thinking of Ending Things? I'm pretty sure I gave Room less than Stalker, than I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Okay, I did. So, I mean, I guess it kind of has some similar themes to I'm Thinking of Ending Things. It could be an interesting comparison if anyone wants to do an essay on it. 8 point... I'm gonna go 8.1 on par with I'm Thinking of Ending Things.
Nice. I guess you could say in a way it also has some similar themes to Room as well, because he's like confined to this world, but obviously like, and if you're comparing him to the child in Room, like that's all he knows. But I'm gonna give it the same as Room actually, or the same that I gave it, which is an 8.3.
Ooh,
Well, I'm gonna go
10.
on par
1.
with Being John Malkovich and give it an 8.4.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Damn.
So it was pretty epic. That is the highest rating I've given as well. Well done.
Plus,
Point
that's
Wait,
one
what,
above
didn't you
Blade
give
Runner.
Blade Runner like 8.4?
8.3.
Ooh.
Ooh.
this is the best film of all time in your opinion. These are the only films that exist.
Actually, joint with Being John Malkovich.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so we're averaging on 8.3, which puts it
Damn.
in. Oh,
Joint second.
oh yeah.
By
It'd be
Room,
like
you've been knocked off.
third place because being John Malkovich is the same but with an 8.2 rather than 8.1. I could bump up my rating, but I think I like it that way. So,
Cool.
damn, you know what that means? That means it goes into the Hall of Fame in the top rated ever. Bumping off Room. It also goes into the top rated movies. And it also goes into the top rated comedy.
What about top rated TV shows?
I don't know,
How
don't
about
go
top rated animation?
meta.
Do we need to rate the
Top
do we
rated
need to rate
musical.
the Truman Show within Truman Show separately? Top rated musical? What?
It's a joke.
Oh. Top rated sci-fi? Question mark?
See, I think the actual Truman Show within the Truman Show, I wouldn't rate that high. It seems kind of boring, to be honest.
Why would you watch them on sleep? Like,
Yeah, like I get if you were
That's
like,
a thing. People watch sleep streams on Twitch.
Weird.
That's a thing.
I'd like.
Did you not know that?
Do people
yeah,
donate?
well, yeah.
Yes.
Hell
A
yeah!
lot.
I'm gonna start one. You can watch Ben from EOV podcast
The
sleep.
EOV sleep stream. Ben, but you never sleep. It's gonna be terrible.
Yeah, it'd be good for American viewers. Dude, like, I get that if there was like highlights or something, but then even when he's not asleep, most of his life is just the exact same day over and over again. Like,
Yeah.
maybe
They've got best of tapes.
they
If you
do.
remember, they mention it at the bar.
Is that a bar just devoted to the Truman Show?
Yeah.
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 But I mean, it had a thing of like, vlogging exists now, and he's supposed to be fairly like witty, and they add in like fake developments. Like, oh, this is his new love interest now. Even if he doesn't like her, don't care.
Sees her once, then just like escapes.
Yeah.
Is I the only one that thought that the people that actually ran the Truman Show bar like barely knew anything about the Truman Show, even though they like, watched it all day every day?
How do you mean?
They just seemed to like one of them knew about it, but then the other two were like, "Wait, what? What's going on here? Has this happened before? I don't remember this." Like, that's literally all you do.
Yeah.
Oh, that work at the Truman Show bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she might not have been working because it was a few years ago, Ollie.
Honestly,
Might not have been working there at that point. Oh, come on.
Yeah, but does she not watch the best of highlights? Come on.
watch the highlight reels.
Did she not watch the episode where he lost his first tooth? That was a classic.
What was your favourite episode?
The one where his dad dies.
I thought
that was pretty good.
I think the acting was kind of subpar in that one, to be honest.
Yeah, my favourite was probably the one where he said good morning in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. I like that one.
Mine's the one where he gets
good episode.
pushed against the wall by the doppelgangers, the doppelgamers.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Do we have any submission spotlights, Ben?
Guess what? We don't. Which is bad.
No!
And you can rectify that by sending in your work of media, be that a short film, music, some kind of written thing, a story, a poem. I don't know. I think for some reason we added those. A game. We had one game submission, but then the account got banned off Twitter for some unknown reason. Go and submit to us. You can contact us via our website. You can just leave a comment somewhere. DM us on social media, which is at ERV Podcast on both Instagram and Twitter. We're being a bit more active there now. By that I mean mildly more active than not using them at all. Be a 10-minute segment devoted to your media. And we'd love to have you on to talk about it. Love a quick interview. And that doesn't have to be live if it's more convenient to pre-record. Just like to learn a bit more about you and how you created it, and then we'll give you some feedback. The appeal being we're just like normal people. We're just normal people like Truman. Damn.
Truman.
We are indeed Truman.
Oh, Ben's only a true boy.
Oh.
So sad. One day I'll lose my first tooth.
Ben, how have you come up with 2 banger lines this episode? Crazy.
I'm just on fire.
Do we have any recommendations? I've got
Well, do you?
a recommendation. We could also talk about Wandavision a bit. We can add Wandavision to the title, Ben, and get some clicks.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'll talk about. So I watched quite a niche indie film, probably never heard of it, called Citizen Kane. I know, I watch indie films, guys. But no, I actually genuinely enjoyed it. I was worried I'd be like really bored, because I know quite a few reviews were like, oh, I can see why people would be bored in this, but I actually was never bored. I thought it was good all the way through. Like, it's 2 hours, that's not that long. And it was just this kind of exploration of a man was like really interesting. You because he actually had a lot of nuance. Like, he's not really a good guy, he's not a bad guy, he's just, you know, it's got depth. And there's the final scene is like really interesting. I mean, when you find out what Rosebud is, I'm not spoiling that. And also, it's like the reporters is asked, like, did you ever find out what Rosebud was? And he said no, and even if I did, I don't think that would explain anything. Like, you can't just get the full picture of a man from one piece of the jigsaw or something. I don't know. It was cool. It was an interesting like look at a person, what defines a person. Because, you know, it's got a whole thing about principles as a theme, and like what love is, I guess, as a theme. It is really good. I really liked it, and also the like dialogue it was very groundbreaking at the time. Like, I knew it was famous for like people talking over each other and stuff, because that had never been done before, but it does actually seem like realistic dialogue. You could probably, if you could probably make the film now with like the exact same script, and it would seem pretty modern. But yeah, it's definitely good. So
does it change your opinions on Mank at all?
On Mank, it made me realise I don't think Mank really told me anything about Citizen Kane, because I watched it, I was like, this is what Citizen Kane is about. I didn't. Mank didn't really tell me any of that. It's just so we gone like, I don't know, Mank. I don't know. Citizen Kane superior to Mank. Anyway, go watch the underrated indie gem, Citizen Kane. Do you have any
Wait,
more
is that it?
recommendations?
You only have one.
Yeah. Been busy.
That's
Sorry.
like 2 weeks in a row. Disappointing.
One more
Well,
week
we're going
and
to
you're
talk about
off.
Wandavision, though.
Off the podcast.
Do you have
Do you-
anything, Ben?
No.
Do you have anything, Ollie?
Well, I watched The Hunt, which I think
I've
Tom's
recommended it.
recommended before. Yeah,
You're not allowed to
which I
recommend
really enjoyed. Yeah, sorry.
it.
I
Oh, you're not
also
allowed to say you
played-
enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah. I thought the exact same as Tom about it.
Yeah, good.
Because that is the definitive opinion. And then I also played the game Limbo. I don't know if you've heard of it, Tom.
I definitely didn't give it to you. No.
Yeah, so it's basically, well, it's like a side scroller, but it's actually like quite dark, and it's quite like, if there's not really much of a coherent story to it, but there's definitely things that develop as you go along that start to add up, and it sort of like changes your perception of different points of the game, and like the actual gameplay itself and the mechanics are really fun and really interesting ways of like getting through the levels and stuff like that, and yeah, really enjoyed it.
Nice.
Cool. Should we talk about Wandavision for like 7 minutes? I think that's makes it an hour. So I was surprised by like how much it would really lean on the sitcom aspect. I don't know. I wasn't ready for it to be like full on 60s sitcom.
Yeah,
I
I kind of like that because it was different, and
yeah.
I don't know.
When I got into it, at first I was like, oh, we're doing this. But then I did start to like the humour because it has to be quite different. And some of the jokes are kind of weird about like making fun of people finding out that, you know, Vision could be maybe not a human and stuff. But that was also quite sinister because I'm like, I don't know what would happen if they did. Like, you know, and it does really well. It's like, basically, whenever everything's normal, it will have your, you know, all the kind of medium shots you expect from a multi-camera sitcom. But then if anything starts to seem odd, then it does your more like modern mobile cameras, like what's and stuff like that. Like when didn't maybe they can learn to live within this world. At that point, it's changed to actually having ups. There's a scene where Wanda picks up like a toy helicopter. I don't know why that was supposed to be odd, but whatever. But, and obviously the helicopters in colour,
Yeah.
very spooky. Currently, we don't really know what's actually going on. It ends with it being on like a TV screen and someone going like, "Wanda, what are you doing to yourself?"
I've heard some speculation about who that is, and I know that this took quite a lot of influence. I think it's called House of M or something like that. The comic that it's loosely based on, but I think like the first 2 episodes, I think it's going to be like very episode by episode in terms of the way that it deals with a lot of the story, because I think that these first 2 were setting something up, but it's going to change very drastically as it develops. And I thought that the comedy worked because, you know, if you look at a lot of Marvel films, especially Phase 3, you know, the comedy is actually quite a big factor behind it, and I think it's kind of bold that they just went all out, and obviously that's going to lead to some people not being a huge fan of it, and it might be quite divisive, especially just from these first 2 episodes. But I don't think it's meant to be answering all the questions. You know, it's setting up ambiguities and plot points that will hopefully be resolved as time goes on.
Yeah.
Guess we'll
What did
see.
you think of it, Ben?
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, Ben, did you watch it? You definitely watched it, didn't you?
Yeah, I definitely did.
What a shame.
Ben. You did. You definitely did. Oh, that's good.
I definitely did.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not being fed lines
Cool.
right now.
Did you like it?
The last thing I would ever do is lie
It's the
to you.
Truman Show. Whoa. Crazy.
Yeah.
How long have we been going, Ben?
3, 2, 1. Exactly an hour.
All right. See ya. Oh, well, I thought it was the 3, 2, 1. Sorry. Right, we're done.
Something
then,
else
that's
about Wandavision is that
Oh, sorry.
it was kind of weird how they released 2 episodes this week, but I think the rest of the time it's just going to be 1.
They did
And a
that with
bit
the
like-
Mandalorian as well.
Yeah, but I mean, a bit like with the Mandalorian as well. Like they're relatively short, and I think that's definitely works for these first 2 because I think they're trying to get through them as quickly as possible before people are turned away by how weird it is. And I think for some of the Mandalorian episodes, especially in season 2, like the Bo-Katan one, for instance, I thought was just way too short, and they didn't really have a story to work with for like a whole episode. That and I guess that's the same in season 1 as well, when there was quite a lot of filler episodes sort of in the middle of the season. But with this, I don't ever feel like it sort of the perfect length.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense
not
because
turning you away from it being too weird, but also, you know, the comedy and the story actually works really well.
and it's like general sitcom length.
Yeah,
And plus ad breaks in the middle. Because
yeah,
for the toaster is like is Stark Enterprises, and then what's the other? I can't remember what the other product is, but I remember it's Hydra. Yeah.
it was a watch. Yeah, a bit
So
like
a
the
bit-
Truman Show.
So who knows what's going on?
Damn.
The writers know what's going on. That's it.
Yeah. I think that says a lot about our society.
Okay. Are we fully done now?
Yeah.
Are we done?
We
Ben, can you comedically cut off the episode really quickly
Well, we
before we
need to-
get to say all right, see you?
We need to say what we're doing next week.
Oh,
honestly.
I'm the only person that ever remembers it. I don't think we've managed to find a link yet, apart from the fact that they both seem quite wacky. That's about it.
Wacky
so we're doing-
Warehouse.
Yeah.
We're doing Sorry to Bother You, the 2018 film.
Yeah,
Groovy.
So watch that.
that's what we're doing.
Watch it
Nice.
now. Get off the
Now.
podcast and watch it now, one listener.
Why don't they wait till later in the week so then it's more fresh in their mind when they listen to our
No,
review of it?
now.
No, now.
I guess they could watch it over and over again up until
You have to watch it every day.
yeah,
Watch a 24-hour loop of it.
and then don't
Yeah.
go to sleep. Just watch a sleep stream.
To pretend that you're asleep.
Yeah,
There should be sleep-only fans where you sell sleep pics.
why don't you set
Okay.
Who says I haven't?
Oh.
So follow us on the social media at ERV Podcast. Like the video. I hate saying this because it just feels cheap and like awful. But
Like and subscribe.
but
Turn
honestly,
on the
like
notification bell.
even with like views as minuscule as ours on YouTube, like you can see a huge difference in the videos that have got likes compared to the ones that don't. Like Kangaroo Jack is now on like approaching 700 views just because it's got like 7 likes. And then any that don't have like at least 1 like just completely fail and get like 20 views, probably like 5 of which are us doing the timestamps. It's just weird. Like you can visually see how much likes and I guess shares maybe would like affect. So do like, subscribe if you feel like it. That would be good. If you're listening on podcast platforms, that is good. You can subscribe to us there. Wait for our next episode. Our website is entertainmentofexcellence.weebly.com. Our social medias are at ERV Podcast. And in case I don't see you, alright, see you.
Alright, see you.
Alright, see ya.
yeah, that seems to